Happy breakup! The cake red and bright pink frosting, each letter shaped like it was trying too hard to be cute. I stared at it, my fork hovering in midair, feeling every pair of eyes in that room glued to me. Some of them were smirking, some pretending to be confused, and a few, mostly his friends, looked like they'd been waiting all night for my reaction. The room smelled faintly of buttercream and wine, and my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He was leaning back in his chair across from me, one arm draped lazily over the backrest, grinning like this was some kind of inside joke I'd be a good sport about. The kind of grin that says, "Come on, don't make a scene." That cake wasn't a surprise. It was a setup. I'd been expecting something all week. Little slips in conversation, the way people avoided meeting my eyes. But I didn't think they'd be so brazen. My hands shook, but not from embarrassment. I was furious. Not the kind of fury that makes you yell, but the kind that settles in quietly, sharpening every thought into something lethal. I didn't say a word. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping against the hardwood, and I felt the silence deepen around me. I grabbed my bag, slipped my phone into my pocket, and walked toward the door. But just before I left, I stopped. My hand was on the doorknob, and I could hear a muffled laugh behind me. His laugh. I turned around, taking in every smug face in the room, memorizing them. Because they thought the story ended here. They thought I'd slink away, humiliated, and maybe cry in my car. But what I was about to do would make this night the last time any of them underestimated me. And I wasn't going to need words to do it. I didn't slam the door when I left. That would have been too easy for them, too satisfying, proof that they'd gotten to me. Instead, I closed it softly, letting the click of the latch be the only sound, and stepped out into the cold night air. My breath formed little clouds in the glow of the street lamp, and for a moment I just stood there, feeling my pulse slow. I could still hear faint laughter through the walls, muffled but unmistakable. It wasn't just his voice, it was hers too. The one I'd been pretending for months wasn't my real problem. His just a friend, the one who always seemed to be around when we argued, the one who'd once sent me a text meant for him that she brushed off as, "Oh, wrong number." I'd been swallowing my suspicions like bitter pills, convincing myself I was overthinking. But that cake, the way she hovered by his side tonight like she'd earned it, that was my confirmation, iced in pastel pink. I didn't drive home. Instead, I crossed the street to the little park where I knew no one from that party would bother to look for me. My fingers were stiff from the cold as I unlocked my phone, scrolling past the dozens of photos and messages I'd been saving for months. Screenshots, videos, even receipts. Literal ones from hotels I'd never been to but recognized from her Instagram stories. They'd thought they were clever, but I'd been watching. The thing about letting people believe they've fooled you is that they stop hiding as carefully. And the thing about me is, I know how to make sure the truth doesn't just come out. It explodes. I opened a group chat, not one I'd made, but one they were already in, with his friends, some coworkers, and yes, his mother, who had always told me, "If you ever catch him being stupid, you tell me first." My thumb hovered over the send button for a long time, not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted to savor this moment. That delicious point right before the hammer drops, when you know the floor is about to give way under someone else, and you're the one holding the lever. And as I started attaching the first video, I decided I wasn't going to just send everything at once. No, that would be too merciful. I was going to do it in pieces, a breadcrumb trail they couldn't stop following, each one worse than the last. By the time I was done, no cake in the world would be sweet enough to wash the taste of this night from their mouths. The first video I sent wasn't the most damning one, not yet. It was just enough to make everyone in that group chat sit up a little straighter. A short, shaky clip from a friend's birthday 3 months ago where they thought I'd left early. You could see him at the bar, leaning in too close to her, brushing her hair back in a way that wasn't friendly, whispering something that made her laugh and touch his arm. The kind of touch that lingers, the kind that says this isn't our first time. I hit send and locked my phone, slipping it back into my bag as I started walking. I didn't need to watch the read receipts light up in real time. I knew they Would. I knew there'd be confusion, maybe even denial at first. And that was perfect. Denial makes people talk. Talk makes them careless. Careless makes my job easier. My heels clicked against the pavement as I headed toward my apartment, the night quiet except for the occasional rush of a car passing by. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed. A message here, a call there, even one from him. I ignored them all. If they wanted my attention, they'd have to earn it. By the time I reached my building, I was calm, focused. I poured myself a glass of wine, set it on the counter, and opened my laptop. If I was going to finish this, I needed to be methodical. I had the evidence, but evidence alone doesn't create impact. Timing does. So I started sorting everything into a folder labeled simply Cake Night. Inside it, I made subfolders: warm-up, middle burn, and final blow. The warm-up was exactly what it sounded like. Flirtatious texts, casual touches, subtle things that could be explained away if you wanted to believe in them. The middle burn was less forgiving. Hotel receipts, photos where they'd forgotten to hide certain details, like the same robe in both their vacation posts or the reflection in a mirror that caught them both in frame. The final blow, well, that was the nuclear option. A video neither of them knew existed, one that would make even his most loyal defenders back away from him like he was radioactive. And here's the thing. I wasn't planning to send that to just the group chat. No, that one was going public. But not tonight. Tonight, I wanted him sweating. I wanted her pacing her apartment, calling him every 5 minutes, wondering what else I had. Fear is a slow poison, and I wanted it in their veins before I struck the final time. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. "Clara, can we talk? Please, just me and you." I didn't even have to check who it was. She'd finally broken her silence, which meant she was scared. Exactly where? I wanted her. I let her text sit unread for an hour, not because I was busy, but because silence is a language, and I wanted her to hear it loud and clear. People like her hate silence. They need control. They need to know what's coming. Next. By the time I finally opened the message, I could see she'd followed it with 3 more. "You don't understand. It's not what you think. Please, can we just meet?" And my personal favorite? "If you're going to tell anyone, at least let me explain first." I almost laughed. Explanations are for people who got caught by accident. She'd been working on this betrayal for months, perfecting it like a side project she thought no one noticed. And now she wanted me to give her a platform? Not a chance. I poured another glass of wine, sat cross-legged on my couch, and began my second move. This time, I sent 2 images to the group chat, side by side. On the left, a photo from his guy's trip to Chicago. Him, beer in hand, grinning with the skyline behind him. On the right, a cropped shot from her Instagram that same weekend, same skyline, same angle, only taken from a few feet to his left. Different filters, different captions, same truth. The chat blew up instantly, messages flying faster than I could read them. His mother sent a single, and then nothing else, which was almost better than any reaction I could have imagined. One of his friends wrote, "Bro, tell me this isn't what it looks like." Another simply left the group. My phone started ringing again. First him, then her, then a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be his cousin, the one who'd always told me to trust my gut. I didn't answer any of them. I was too busy setting up the middle burn. Because tomorrow morning, while he was still trying to do damage control with his family, I was going to schedule a series of anonymous email drops to his office, not to his boss directly. Oh no, that would be too obvious. I'd send them to the HR department, the kind that handles conduct unbecoming, quietly but effectively. And in those emails, the hotel receipts, the timestamps, the proof that half those late nights at the office were spent anywhere but. I knew his company had a zero-tolerance policy for personal misconduct during business travel. I also knew his next promotion review was in 2 weeks. By the time this was over, he wouldn't just be single. He'd be unemployed. And she'd be the reason. Which, in my book, was better than any cake inscription they could have dreamed up. I didn't sleep much that night, but not because I was anxious. Because I was excited. There's a very particular kind of calm that comes when you've already decided someone's fate and all that's left is to execute it. At 7:02 a.m., I sent my Middleburn package to HR using a brand new anonymous email I'd created the night before. In the subject line, I wrote, "Professional misconduct documentation, time sensitive." Nothing dramatic, nothing that would get flagged. Just enough to make sure it got opened right away. Inside the body of the email, I included a short note. "I believe you should be aware of conduct during recent business trips that may violate company policy. All documentation attached is verifiable." Then I attached every single hotel receipt, with his name on it, time-stamped photos from those trips, and screenshots of the messages he sent to her while he was supposedly at client dinners. I made sure to highlight the dates that matched company-paid travel. The best part? They'd been dumb enough to expense some of the meals they had together. Company credit card, her wine glass right there in the photo. And she wasn't an employee. I didn't have to say much. The evidence did all the talking. By 7:14, the attachments had been opened. By 7:17, they'd been forwarded to at least 2 other internal addresses. I could track that because I'd embedded a pixel in the images, a tiny invisible marker that pings when someone views them. So I knew in real time that the noose was tightening. Meanwhile, my phone was buzzing with a different kind of chaos. His mother had left me a voicemail at 6:45, a mix of disbelief and thinly veiled rage, but not at me. She wanted me to come over just to talk. Translation: she wanted the unfiltered version, not whatever excuses he'd fed her. I didn't respond yet. That conversation would be my dessert, not my breakfast. Around 9:30, I finally got a text from him. "Can you please stop this? We can work it out. 10 minutes later, you're ruining my life." That one made me laugh out loud. Funny how quickly the tone changes when you realize you're not in control anymore. I took my time before replying with a single line, "I'm just getting started." By noon, I knew the HR move had landed exactly the way I wanted. A mutual acquaintance who worked in a different department texted me, completely unaware I was the source, saying, "Something's going on with him. People are whispering he got called into a closed-door meeting and hasn't come back." I could picture it. Him sitting there, hands clasped, trying to act indignant while the evidence sat printed on the table in front of him. He'd try to deny it, but I knew HR wouldn't even argue. They'd let him talk himself into deeper holes, all while quietly building the case to cut him loose. Perfect. I decided it was time for phase 3, the one they'd both remember for years. The final blow. I'd been saving it for the perfect moment, and lunch hour on a Friday felt poetic. People scrolling their phones, looking for gossip to fill the boredom before the weekend. I uploaded the video, the one they didn't know existed, to a burner account. It wasn't grainy or shadowy. It was crystal clear, shot in full daylight from across a quiet cafe terrace. Him leaning in, her kissing him like they had nowhere else to be. Her hand resting on his thigh under the table. And the timestamp? 2 weeks before my birthday, on the day he'd told me his father was in the hospital and he couldn't make it to dinner with my family. I didn't post it to just my own followers. I sent it directly to a popular local gossip page that thrived on scandals like this. They didn't even hesitate. Within minutes, it was up, captioned with nothing but, "When you tell your girlfriend you're at the hospital but you're actually at brunch with her best friend." The comments were brutal, and the shares multiplied faster than I could refresh the page. My phone lit up again, but this time it wasn't him or her. It was people I hadn't heard from in months, some of whom had believed every lie they'd told about me. Now their messages were a mix of apologies and shocked emojis. Even better? One of her relatives, someone who'd once bragged about how happy she made him, messaged me to say, "She's been crying for hours. What did you do?" I smiled to myself. What I did was give her exactly what she gave me, only I wrapped it in precision, timing, and an audience she couldn't escape. And the best part? I still had one more card to play. One they wouldn't see coming until it was already too late. That last card had nothing to do with public humiliation. They already had more of that than they could handle. No, the final move was personal, surgical. the kind of thing that would follow them quietly, long after the gossip died down. See, months ago, before I even suspected the affair, she'd asked me for a small favor. She was applying for a high-level position at a nonprofit that did community outreach, and she needed references. I'd agreed, mostly because I didn't care enough to say no at the time, and she'd given my name as a character reference. She never told them to remove it, and I never reminded her, which meant when the hiring committee called me yesterday to confirm a few details, they had no idea they were handing me a loaded weapon. I waited until this morning to return their call. My tone was calm, measured, almost reluctant, the voice of someone who really doesn't want to get involved but feels obligated to be honest. I told them I'd worked closely with her in a volunteer setting and had serious concerns about her judgment, professionalism, and discretion. I didn't go into details. I didn't need to. I just left enough space for their minds to fill in the blanks. People trust their own imaginations more than they trust a list of facts. By the time I hung up, I knew I'd done irreversible damage. Sure enough, less than 2 hours later, she texted me in all caps. "Did you talk to them?" I didn't reply. If she wanted an answer, she could get it from the rejection email she was about to receive. And as for him, well, I'd already heard through the grapevine that HR had mutually agreed with him to part ways, which is corporate speak for "we're firing you, but you can resign to save face." The problem with that is the gossip page post was still trending locally, so every potential employer who Googled his name would see it. That night, I lit a candle, poured a glass of wine, and finally cut both of them from my phone, not out of mercy, but because the game was over. They'd started it with a cake. I finished it with a career, a reputation, and a life plan in ruins. And I did it all without raising my voice once. A week later, the dust still hadn't settled for them, and that was by design. The gossip post had slowed in shares but picked up in screenshots, drifting into private group chats where the captions got uglier each time. I hadn't posted anything new, but I didn't need to. The beauty of a well-planned strike is that it sustains itself. Every time someone else discovered the story, they brought it back to life like it had just happened yesterday. And with every retelling, the details got sharper, more damning, as people filled in their own versions of events. Ran into one of his friends at the grocery store, someone who used to barely acknowledge me when we were together. He stopped me in the produce aisle, leaning awkwardly against a display of apples. "I'll be honest," he said. "We thought you'd just disappear after that night. Didn't think you had this in you." I smiled, shrugged, and reached for a bag of grapes. "Guess you didn't know me as well as you thought." His eyes lingered, like he wanted to ask more, but he didn't. They never do. It's easier to fill the gaps with their own fears. Later that evening, I got a DM from someone I didn't know, a woman in another city, saying she'd recognized her from the video. Apparently, the same tricks they'd pulled on me weren't exclusive. This woman had her own collection of coincidences that didn't add up. She sent me photos, receipts, even a voicemail where he and she were plotting to lie to someone else. I almost laughed at how predictable they were. I didn't post that new evidence. Not yet. I kept it, tucked away like a final match you save for the end of the night when the fire's almost out. Because while my revenge had already landed, I'd learned something valuable. Sometimes the most satisfying thing isn't destroying someone in one big blaze. It's keeping just enough fuel in your pocket to make sure they never feel safe. Again. And I knew, deep down, that sooner or later they'd give me a reason to light it. 2 months passed before that reason came. I'd almost forgotten about them. Not forgiven, just moved on to better things. My life was quiet, clean, and deliciously mine again. Then one afternoon, a friend sent me a photo taken at a bar downtown. It was them, sitting at a corner table, her leaning in close, him laughing like the last 2 months hadn't happened. And on the table in front of them, in all its pathetic glory, was another cake. Different color frosting, same childish script. Still winning. I stared at the photo for a long moment, not angry, not even surprised, just entertained. It's amazing how some people will keep poking the bear, convinced the claws were a one-time show. They were trying to prove they'd survived me, maybe even reclaim the story. Cute. So I opened my laptop, pulled up that last untouched file, the one from the stranger in another city. The receipts, the voicemail, the time-stamped photos of them working the same con on someone else while pretending they were working on themselves. And this time, I didn't send it to a gossip page. I sent it to her new employer, CCing the board of directors. I sent it to the woman they'd lied to, attaching the proof in case she wanted to see exactly what kind of people she'd been dealing with. And for him? I sent it to his father, the man he'd claimed was in the hospital, while he was actually out kissing her in broad daylight. The fallout was instant. Within 48 hours, her job was gone. The woman they'd scammed was threatening legal action. And him? He went dark. No posts, no smiling bar photos, no more smug little cakes. Didn't need to see them crumble in real time. I knew they had. I could feel it in the way my phone stayed quiet, in the way mutual acquaintances suddenly found reasons to catch up with me. Revenge isn't always about rage. Sometimes it's about precision, patience, making sure the ending doesn't just close the book. It nails it shut. And in my story, they started it with frosting. I ended it with silence. The kind that follows you, no matter where you go. The author of this story is Sarah, the creator of the Revenge with Sarah channel. This story is my creation, and there are many more to come where revenge is served cold, but with flawless precision. In this case, it only took one petty gesture, one smug joke, to set off a chain of events that dismantled their careers, reputations, and carefully built lies. They tried to humiliate me in front of a room full of people, but in the end, they became the show, and everyone was watching. Takeaway. The real victory wasn't in the public humiliation. It was in making sure they could never rewrite what happened. Their own actions gave me every tool I needed, and I used them with precision and patience. The cake was just the trigger. The silence that followed was the real punishment.